7 empty chairs stared back at me like accusers in a jury box. The waiter had stopped asking if I wanted to order appetizers for the table about 20 minutes ago. Now he just refilled my water glass and gave me those pitying looks that restaurant staff reserve for guys who've been stood up on what's obviously supposed to be a special occasion. "Happy 40th, Dan," I muttered, raising my glass to the empty seats. "Nothing says family man like dining alone at Romano's on your birthday." The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd picked this place specifically because Melanie loved it here. Upscale enough to make her feel important, but not so fancy that our 15-year-old daughter Riley would complain about the dress code. My brother Tyler had even promised to drive down from Akron. Eddie, my best friend since college, had cleared his schedule at the bar he owned downtown. But here I sat, alone, watching other families laugh and celebrate while I nursed a beer that had gone warm an hour ago. My phone buzzed. A text from Melanie. "Sorry, honey, showing a house ran late. Rain check?" Rain check. Like my birthday was some casual business meeting she could reschedule. I scrolled up through our recent messages, looking for clues I'd missed. The signs had been there for weeks, maybe months. Late nights at the office. Weekend client meetings that couldn't wait. The way she'd started putting her phone face down during dinner. Another buzz. This time it was Riley. "Dad, Mom said you canceled dinner? Thought we were celebrating tonight." Canceled dinner. That was rich. I typed back, "Still at Romano's if you want to join your old man." "On my way," came her immediate reply. At least someone in my family still gave a damn. I'd built my small accounting firm from nothing after getting laid off from the corporate world 5 years ago. Callahan Financial Services wasn't Goldman Sachs, but it paid the bills and gave me the flexibility to be present for Riley's school events and soccer games. Melanie, meanwhile, had climbed the ladder at Blake & Associates Real Estate, becoming their top broker and eventually Carter Blake's business partner. Carter Blake. Even thinking his name made my jaw clench. Golden boy with his perfect hair, expensive suits, and that smug smile he flashed in all the real estate ads plastered around Cleveland. "Your dream home awaits with Blake & Associates," the billboards proclaimed, featuring Carter's artificially whitened grin. The waiter approached again, this time with genuine concern. "Sir, would you like me to move you to a smaller table?" "No thanks, my daughter's coming." He nodded and retreated, probably thinking I was some divorced dad trying to maintain dignity in front of his kid. If only it were that simple. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but the message made my stomach drop. "Check your email now. A friend." I opened my email app, scrolling past the usual business correspondence and spam until I found it. An anonymous account had sent me a single message with no subject line, just a link to a cloud storage folder. My hands shook slightly as I clicked it. The folder contained dozens of screenshots. Text messages between Melanie and Carter that made everything crystal clear. Messages that went back months, maybe longer. Messages that revealed not just an affair, but something deeper and more calculated. "Can't wait to get away this weekend," read one from Melanie. "Dan's so buried in his little business he won't even notice I'm gone." Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Carter's reply, "Your husband's a joke, babe. When are you going to leave him?" "Soon. Just need to figure out the financials. His business is doing better than he lets on." There were photos, too. Carter's lakeside cabin. Melanie's car parked in his driveway. The two of them together in ways that left no room for doubt. But the worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was the casual cruelty in their messages. The way they laughed about my pathetic birthday dinner plans. How Carter had nicknamed me the accountant, like it was some kind of disease. "Dad?" Riley's voice cut through my rage. She stood beside the table, looking concerned. At 15, she had her mother's striking features, but thankfully none of her calculating nature. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I quickly closed the phone and stood to hug her. "Just work stuff, kiddo. Thanks for coming." She slid into the chair across from me, glancing around at the empty table. "Where is everyone?" "Good question." I flagged down the waiter. "We'll just be 2 tonight." As we ordered, I watched Riley's face. She was smart, probably smarter than both her parents combined. She had to have noticed the tension at home, the way Melanie and I barely spoke anymore except about logistics and schedules. "Dad, are you and Mom okay?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I could lie, maintain the facade a little longer. Or I could start being honest with the one person in my family who deserved it. "We're going through some rough patches," I said carefully. "But whatever happens, you know I love you, right?" She nodded, but her eyes were worried. Is Mom having an affair? The directness of the question stunned me. What makes you ask that? She's been acting weird, getting dressed up for work more than usual, staying out late, and yesterday I saw a text on her phone from someone named Carter with a heart emoji. Smart kid. Too smart for her own good sometimes. I don't know for sure, I said, which was technically true until about 5 minutes ago. But if she is, we'll deal with it together, okay? The rest of dinner passed in relative normalcy. Riley told me about school, her upcoming soccer tryouts, the college prep classes she wanted to take next year, normal father-daughter conversation that felt precious given the circumstances. As we walked to our cars afterward, she hugged me tight. Happy birthday, Dad. I'm sorry everyone else flaked. You didn't flake. That's all that matters. I watched her drive away in the car Melanie had bought her for her 15th birthday, a used Honda that was probably safer and more reliable than anything I could have afforded. At least Melanie was a good mother, even if she was a terrible wife. My phone rang as I sat in my own car, trying to process everything. Tyler's name appeared on the screen. Dan, I'm so sorry about tonight. Something came up at work, and... It's fine, I cut him off. Actually, it's better this way. What do you mean? I stared at the restaurant where I just had dinner with my daughter, possibly one of the last normal conversations we'd have before everything exploded. I mean, I found out some things tonight, things that are going to change everything. What kind of things? The kind that require careful planning. I started the engine. Can you meet me at your place tomorrow? I might need your help with something. Tyler worked in IT security, which meant he understood both technology and discretion. If I was going to handle this situation properly, I'd need someone with his skills. Of course. Dan, whatever's going on, tomorrow, I said. And Tyler? Don't mention this conversation to anyone. Not yet. As I drove home through the quiet Cleveland streets, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity. The confusion and self-doubt that had plagued me were gone, replaced by cold determination. Melanie and Carter thought they were so clever, carrying on their affair while I remained obliviously buried in spreadsheets and tax returns. They saw me as weak, pathetic, someone to be pitied and discarded. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The house was dark when I got home, which wasn't surprising. Melanie's car wasn't in the driveway either, probably showing another house or having drinks with her real estate friends. Or maybe she was with Carter, celebrating how they'd successfully ruined my birthday without me even knowing why. I poured myself a bourbon and sat in my home office, staring at the anonymous email on my computer screen. The photos and messages were even more damning on the larger monitor. Months of deception laid out in high-definition clarity. But who had sent them? And why now? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. There's more where that came from. Are you ready to fight back? I stared at the message for a long moment before typing. Who is this? Someone who's tired of watching good people get stepped on. Check your business email. Bank statements showing large cash withdrawals from our joint accounts. Credit card charges at expensive hotels and restaurants that I'd never seen. Jewelry purchases that had never made it home to me or Riley. They weren't just having an affair, they were spending my money to fund it. But the real revelation came in the final document. A partnership agreement between Melanie and Carter that I'd never seen before. According to the paperwork, they'd restructured Blake and Associates to give Melanie a larger ownership stake, using our house as collateral without my knowledge or consent. My hands shook as I reached for the phone. Tyler answered on the second ring. Dan, it's almost midnight. I need you here, now. What happened? Just come and bring your laptop. While I waited for Tyler, I made copies of everything, storing them in multiple locations, both digital and physical. If Melanie and Carter wanted to play games with my finances, they'd picked the wrong accountant to mess with. Tyler arrived 20 minutes later, still in his pajamas with a jacket thrown over them. One look at my face told him this wasn't a social call. Show me, he said simply. I walked him through everything, the affair, the financial deception, the partnership agreement that put our home at risk. Tyler's expression grew darker with each revelation. That partnership document, he said finally. It's probably not legally binding without your signature as a spouse. Probably isn't good enough. You're right. He opened his laptop and started typing. But if they're playing dirty with your finances, we can play dirty with their digital security. What do you mean? Tyler's smile was grim. Melanie gave you access to her iCloud account years ago for family photos, right? And I'm willing to bet she never changed the password. He was right. Within minutes, we had access to months of additional evidence. Not just the affair, but Carter's other business dealings that weren't exactly above board. inflated property appraisals, kickbacks from contractors, even some questionable dealings with city planning officials. "This is enough to destroy his real estate license," Tyler said. "Maybe even bring criminal charges." But I wasn't interested in turning this over to the authorities. Not yet. They'd humiliated me, made me look like a fool while they spent my money and risked my home. They deserved to experience some humiliation of their own. "I want to hit them where it hurts first," I said. "Their reputations, their business, make them feel as powerless as they tried to make me feel." Tyler leaned back in his chair. "What did you have in mind?" Over the next 3 hours, we crafted a plan that was both elegant and devastating. Nothing illegal, nothing that couldn't be justified as protecting my own financial interests. But it would hurt. The first step was securing my assets. As a joint account holder, I had every right to transfer funds to protect them from unauthorized use. By dawn, I'd moved most of our savings into a new business account that only I could access. I left enough in the joint account to cover household expenses, but the days of funding their affair with my money were over. Next, I used the evidence of their partnership fraud to file complaints with both the Real Estate Licensing Board and the Better Business Bureau. I didn't accuse anyone of anything directly. I simply raised concerns about potential conflicts of interest and requested investigations. The beauty of bureaucracy is that once you start the wheels turning, they're almost impossible to stop. Tyler helped me set up monitoring on all of Melanie's digital accounts. Not to spy, that would be illegal, but to receive notifications when passwords were changed or new devices were added, purely for security purposes, of course. By the time Melanie came home at 6 a.m., I was showered, dressed, and eating breakfast like nothing had happened. She slipped in quietly, probably hoping to avoid conversation. "Good morning," I said cheerfully. "How was the showing?" She froze in the doorway, still wearing the same dress from yesterday, but now wrinkled and disheveled. It ran really late. Had to take the clients out for drinks afterward. "Must have been some drinks. You look exhausted." "I'm going to shower and get some sleep before my next appointment." "Of course. Oh, by the way, I moved some money around yesterday. You know how I worry about account security." The color drained from her face. "What do you mean, moved money around?" "Just transferred our savings to a more secure account. Nothing major." I smiled innocently. "Unless there's some reason you need immediate access to large amounts of cash?" She stared at me for a long moment, clearly trying to figure out how much I knew. "No, of course not. I just like to know when you make financial decisions without discussing them first." "Like you discussed that partnership agreement with Carter before using our house as collateral?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. Melanie's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "I don't know what you're talking about," she finally managed. "I'm sure you don't." I finished my coffee and stood up. "I have client meetings all day. We should probably have a longer conversation about our finances tonight. You know, like married couples do." I left her standing in the kitchen, probably frantically trying to figure out her next move. Let her sweat for a while. My first stop was Eddie's bar, even though it wouldn't open for hours. I found him in the back office, going over inventory. "You look like hell," he said by way of greeting. "Feel worse." I filled him in on the broad strokes. The affair, the financial deception, the partnership fraud. Eddie whistled low. "What are you going to do?" "Make them regret underestimating me." "Need help?" That's why Eddie had been my best friend since college. No judgment, no lectures about forgiveness or working things out. Just a simple offer to help. "Maybe. Can you keep your ears open? Melanie's friends come in here sometimes. Real estate crowd likes to gossip after work." "Say no more." My phone rang as I was leaving the bar. Carter Blake's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring. He called back immediately. This time I answered. "Dan, good to hear from you, buddy. Listen, I think there might be some confusion about a business document Melanie and I filed. Nothing major, just wanted to clear the air." "What kind of confusion, Carter?" "Well, it seems like there might be some questions about proper authorization procedures. I'm sure it's just a paperwork issue." So he'd already heard from the licensing board. That was faster than I'd expected. "I'm sure it is," I said pleasantly. "Paperwork can be tricky, especially when it involves other people's property." "Right, exactly. Look, why don't we grab lunch today? Talk it through like reasonable adults?" "I don't think that's necessary, Carter. I'm sure the proper authorities will sort everything out." "Dan, I think you might be misunderstanding." I hung up. Within an hour, both Melanie and Carter had called multiple times. I ignored them all. Let them wonder what I knew and what I was planning. Uncertainty was a weapon, and I intended to use it. The real satisfaction came that afternoon when Tyler called with an update. "You're not going to believe this," he said. I've been monitoring some real estate industry forums, and word is already spreading about the investigation into Blake and Associates. Apparently, some of their competitors have been waiting for an opportunity like this. What kind of opportunity? The kind where they can poach clients and spread rumors about ethical violations. Carter's phone has been ringing all day with concerned business partners wanting to discuss their ongoing relationships. I smiled for the first time in months. In the real estate business, reputation was everything. Once people started questioning your integrity, the damage spread like wildfire. There's more, Tyler continued. Melanie tried to access the savings account around noon. When she couldn't, she called the bank. They told her she'd need your authorization for any transactions over $1,000. How do you know that? Because she immediately called Carter, and they had a very heated conversation about money problems. A conversation that happened to take place in her car, where her phone automatically connected to the Bluetooth system that backs up to the cloud. I had to admire Tyler's thoroughness. What did they say? Carter's not happy that his sugar mama just got cut off. Apparently, he's been counting on Melanie's money to cover some business expenses. Without access to your savings, they're both in a tight spot. The pieces were falling into place perfectly. By cutting off their funding, I'd forced them into a reactive position. Now they'd start making mistakes, taking bigger risks to solve their immediate problems, and I'd be watching when they did. The next morning brought a surprise I hadn't expected. Riley knocking on my office door at 7 a.m., holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the determined expression she got when she'd made up her mind about something important. "We need to talk," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "About what, kiddo?" "About Mom and Carter Blake." I nearly choked on my coffee. "What about them?" "Dad, I'm 15, not 5. I know what's going on." She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a text message. "Mom left her phone in the kitchen yesterday while she was showering. This popped up." The message was from Carter. "Your husband knows something. We need to talk before this gets out of hand." I stared at the screen, processing the implications. "Riley, I don't want you getting caught up in... I'm already caught up in it. This is my family, too." Her voice was steady, mature beyond her years. And I'm tired of pretending everything's normal when it's obviously not. She was right, of course. Kids always knew more than adults gave them credit for. And Riley was smarter than most. "What do you want to know?" "Everything, and I want to help." Over the next hour, I explained the situation in terms appropriate for a 15-year-old. The affair, the financial deception, the partnership fraud. Riley listened without interruption, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. "So, they've been stealing from us," she said finally. "It's more complicated than that, but essentially, yes." "And you're fighting back." "I'm protecting our family's interests." Riley nodded slowly. "Good. They deserve whatever happens to them." The coldness in her voice surprised me, but then again, Melanie was her mother. The betrayal probably hurt her even more than it hurt me. "There's something else," Riley said. "Something you should know about Carter." She told me about a conversation she'd overheard at a soccer tournament the previous month. Carter's daughter played on a rival team, and the parents often mingled during games. According to Riley, Carter's wife Paige had been complaining to other mothers about her husband's suspicious behavior. "She thinks he's having an affair, but she doesn't know with who," Riley explained. "She hired a private investigator." This was a development I hadn't anticipated. If Carter's wife was already suspicious and had professional help investigating, it wouldn't be long before she discovered the truth about Melanie. "There's more," Riley continued. "I looked up the investigator online. His name is Marcus Webb, and he specializes in financial fraud cases." The name sent a chill down my spine. If Paige Blake had hired someone to investigate financial irregularities, they'd eventually uncover the same partnership fraud I'd discovered. But they might also find evidence of other crimes I didn't know about yet. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Need to see you ASAP. Found something big." I looked at Riley, who was watching me with expectant eyes. "Want to take a ride with your old man?" Tyler's apartment was a testament to organized chaos. Computer equipment covered every surface, cables snaked across the floor, and multiple monitors displayed streams of data that looked like something from a science fiction movie. "Riley," Tyler said with surprise when we walked in, "I didn't know you were part of the operation now." "She's got good intelligence," I said. "What did you find?" Tyler's expression turned serious. "Carter Blake isn't just having an affair and committing partnership fraud. He's running a much bigger scam." He led us to his main computer setup and pulled up a complex flowchart showing financial transactions between dozens of accounts. "I've been tracking the money trail from Blake and Associates, and it goes deep. Carter's been inflating property values, taking kickbacks from contractors, and skimming money from client escrow accounts. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 2 years. Riley leaned forward, studying the screen. Is Mom involved in all of this? That's the million-dollar question, Tyler said. Some of the transactions required her authorization as a partner, but others were done through accounts she might not have known about. I felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Relief that Melanie might not be a criminal, just an adulteress. Disappointment that I couldn't hate her as completely as I wanted to. There's more, Tyler continued. I think Carter's been planning to disappear with the money. Look at this. He showed us evidence of offshore accounts, travel bookings to non-extradition countries, and liquidation of assets that could be easily transported. He's going to run, I said, probably within the next few weeks. And if he does, everyone he's defrauded, including your family, will be left holding the bag. Riley stood up abruptly. We have to stop him. We will, I said, but we need to be smart about it. Tyler pulled up another screen. I've got a plan, but it's risky. We expose everything at once. The affair, the fraud, the escape plan. Make it impossible for him to run and ensure that everyone knows exactly what he's been doing. How? Blake & Associates is hosting their annual Client Appreciation Gala next weekend. 500 of Cleveland's wealthiest real estate investors, all in one room. Carter will be giving a presentation about the company's future. I could see where this was going. We hijack his presentation. Exactly. I can hack into their audiovisual system remotely. While Carter's up there talking about trust and integrity, we display all the evidence on the big screens, bank records, affair photos, offshore account information, everything. Riley's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. He'll be completely humiliated in front of all his clients and competitors. It was brilliant, but it was also dangerous. If we got caught, we could face serious legal consequences. And once we pulled the trigger, there'd be no going back. What about Mom? Riley asked quietly. That was the question I'd been dreading. Melanie would be at the gala too, probably sitting at the head table with Carter. When the truth came out, she'd be humiliated alongside him. She made her choice, I said finally. She chose to betray our family and put our financial security at risk. Whatever happens, she brought it on herself. Riley nodded, but I could see the pain in her eyes. Despite everything, Melanie was still her mother. We need more evidence, Tyler said. Enough to make sure Carter can't weasel out of this or blame it on someone else. What kind of evidence? The kind that requires getting close to him, making him think you're willing to negotiate. The idea of sitting across from Carter Blake and pretending to be reasonable made my stomach turn. But if it meant protecting my family and ensuring justice, I'd do it. Set up a meeting, I said. Let him think he's winning. Tyler grinned. This is going to be fun. As we drove home, Riley was quiet, staring out the window at the Cleveland skyline. Finally, she spoke. Dad, what's going to happen to us? After all this is over? It was a fair question, and one I'd been avoiding thinking about too deeply. When the dust settled, Melanie and I would probably be divorced. Riley would have to choose between parents, deal with the social fallout, maybe even change schools if the scandal got too big. I don't know, kiddo, but whatever happens, we'll face it together. Will you hate Mom forever? I considered the question carefully. I don't think I could hate your mother forever. She's still the woman who gave me you, and that's the best thing that ever happened to me. But I'll never forgive her for what she's done to our family. Riley nodded, seeming to accept that answer. When do we spring the trap? Soon, I said. Very soon. That evening, I called Carter and arranged to meet him at his office the next day. He sounded relieved, probably thinking I was ready to negotiate some kind of settlement that would keep everything quiet. He had no idea what was coming. As I lay in bed that night, listening to Melanie's steady breathing beside me, I felt a strange sense of peace. For months, I'd been living in confusion and self-doubt, wondering what I'd done wrong, how I could fix our marriage. Now I knew the truth, and I had a plan. In less than a week, Carter Blake would face the consequences of his actions in the most public way possible, and Melanie would have to decide whether she wanted to stand by her lover or try to salvage what remained of her relationship with her family. Either way, the lies were about to end. Carter's office occupied the top floor of a glass tower downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding view of Lake Erie. The space screamed success: leather furniture, expensive artwork, and a conference table that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Carter himself looked less polished than usual. His typically perfect hair showed signs of stress, and there were dark circles under his eyes that even his expensive concealer couldn't hide completely. "Dan, thanks for coming," he said, extending a hand that I reluctantly shook. "Can I get you coffee? Water?" "I'm fine. Let's just talk." We sat across from each other at the massive conference table, and I could see Carter calculating his approach. He probably had a whole speech prepared about misunderstandings and mutual benefit. "Look," he began, "I know this situation has gotten complicated, but I think we can work something out that benefits everyone." "What kind of something?" Well, obviously there are some hurt feelings about Melanie and me. I get that, but we're all adults here, and sometimes these things happen. The important thing is that we handle it maturely." The casual dismissal of my marriage as "these things happen" made my jaw clench, but I kept my expression neutral. "Go on." "The business partnership with Melanie is legitimate, but I understand your concerns about the paperwork. We can restructure it, maybe bring you in as a silent partner, give you a stake in Blake & Associates' success." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents that would give me a small percentage of the business in exchange for dropping all complaints and signing a non-disclosure agreement. "What about the money you've been spending from our joint accounts?" Carter had the grace to look embarrassed. "That was inappropriate, and I apologize. We can work out a payment plan to reimburse you for any personal expenses." I pretended to study the documents while Tyler's voice echoed in my head. "Make him think he's winning." "This is interesting," I said finally, "but I'm not sure it addresses all my concerns." "What other concerns?" "Well, there's the matter of your other business activities. The inflated appraisals, the contractor kickbacks, the escrow account irregularities." Carter's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. The question is whether we can find a way to resolve everything quietly, or if I need to involve the authorities." For a moment, I thought he might confess everything. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his water glass, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Then his expression hardened, and I saw the real Carter Blake emerge from behind the polished facade. "You don't want to threaten me, Dan. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Enlighten me. You think you're some kind of detective uncovering my secrets? You're a small-time accountant who couldn't even keep his wife satisfied. Melanie came to me because she was tired of being married to a boring, mediocre man who'll never amount to anything." The words hit like physical blows, but I kept my expression steady. This was exactly what I needed. Carter dropping his mask and revealing his true nature. "Is that what you think?" "It's what I know. And here's what else I know. You're going to take this deal and disappear quietly, because if you don't, I'll destroy what's left of your pathetic little business. I have connections in this city that you can't imagine. One phone call from me, and your clients will start getting visits from building inspectors, tax auditors, and health department officials. Your life will become a bureaucratic nightmare that never ends." I stood up slowly, leaving the documents on the table. "Thanks for the offer, Carter. I'll be in touch." "Where are you going? We're not finished." "Yes," I said, reaching the door. "We are." I could hear him shouting behind me as I walked to the elevator, but I didn't look back. Tyler had been recording the entire conversation through my phone, and Carter had just provided us with enough material to destroy him completely. The war was about to begin in earnest. That afternoon, Tyler and I met at Eddie's bar to plan our next move. The lunch crowd had cleared out, leaving us alone with our strategy session and Eddie's homemade chili. "He threatened you," Tyler said, replaying Carter's rant through his laptop speakers. "That's going to play really well when we release this audio." "When do we move?" "The gala is in 3 days. That gives us time to gather the last pieces of evidence and set up the technical aspects." Tyler pulled up a floor plan of the hotel ballroom where the event would be held. "I've already identified their audiovisual setup. Getting access won't be a problem." Eddie refilled our beers and sat down at the table. "What about Melanie? Has she figured out what you're planning?" "She knows something's coming, but not what. She's been trying to get me to talk, but I've been avoiding her." That was an understatement. For the past 3 days, I'd been leaving early and coming home late, communicating with Melanie only through text messages about logistics and schedules. The tension in our house was thick enough to cut with a knife. "She's scared," Tyler observed. "I've been monitoring her communications with Carter, and they're both starting to panic." "Good. Panic leads to mistakes." My phone buzzed with a call from Riley's school. I answered, expecting routine administrative business, but the principal's voice was tense. "Mr. Callahan, I'm calling about an incident involving Riley today. She got into a physical altercation with another student." My heart sank. Riley had never been in a fight in her life. "Is she hurt?" "She's fine. But the other student required medical attention. I need you to come in immediately. I found Riley sitting in the principal's office, her knuckles scraped and her soccer uniform torn. She looked up when I entered, and I saw a mixture of defiance and shame in her eyes. "What happened?" I asked. Principal Morrison answered before Riley could speak. "According to witnesses, Riley attacked Jennifer Blake during lunch period. Jennifer is Carter Blake's daughter." The pieces clicked into place immediately. Word about the investigation into Blake and Associates had probably reached the other parents, and kids being kids, it had filtered down to the students. "What did Jennifer say to you?" I asked Riley directly. "Mr. Callahan, that's not really—" the principal began. "What did she say?" I repeated. Riley's voice was quiet but steady. "She said her dad told her that you were trying to frame him because you're too weak to keep your wife from cheating. She said Mom was a whore and you were a loser." I felt Tyler tense beside me, and Eddie muttered something under his breath that was probably not appropriate for a school setting. "And what did you do?" "I told her to take it back. When she wouldn't, I hit her." Principal Morrison looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Callahan, I understand this is a difficult family situation, but violence is never acceptable. Riley will be suspended for 3 days." "I understand. Can I take her home now?" During the drive home, Riley stared out the window without speaking. Finally, I broke the silence. "You know I can't condone what you did, right?" "I know. But I also understand why you did it." She looked at me with surprise. "You do?" "You were defending our family. That takes courage, even when it's misguided." "I'm not sorry I hit her, Dad. She deserved it." I sighed. "Maybe she did, but now Carter knows we're planning something, and he's going to be ready for it." "Does that change anything?" I thought about Carter's threats, about the way he'd dismissed my marriage and insulted my character, about Jennifer Blake repeating her father's cruel words to my daughter. "No," I said finally. "It just means we hit harder." That evening, Melanie finally cornered me in our bedroom. She'd been waiting when I got home from dropping Riley off at Tyler's house, sitting on the bed with the determined expression of someone who'd rehearsed what they were going to say. "We need to talk," she said. "About what?" "About whatever you're planning. Carter told me about your meeting today. He said you made threats." I almost laughed at the irony. "He said I made threats?" "Dan, I know you're hurt and angry, but this has gone far enough. Whatever evidence you think you have, whatever you're planning to do with it, please don't. Think about Riley. Think about our family." "I am thinking about our family. That's why I'm doing this." Melanie stood up and moved closer, and for a moment I could see the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. Beautiful, vulnerable, desperate. "I made a mistake," she said. "I know that, but it doesn't have to destroy everything we've built together. We can work through this." "Can we? Can we work through the lies, the financial fraud, the partnership agreement you signed without my knowledge?" "The partnership was Carter's idea. I didn't understand all the legal implications." "But you understood enough to use our house as collateral." She flinched. "I thought it was just a formality. Carter said it was standard business practice." "And the affair? Was that standard business practice too?" Tears started flowing down her cheeks, and I felt my resolve waver slightly. Despite everything, I'd loved this woman for half my life. "I was lonely, Dan. You were so focused on your business, and Carter made me feel important, desired. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. But it did mean something. It meant you were willing to betray our marriage and risk our family's financial security for excitement. I'll end it. Right now, tonight. I'll call Carter and tell him it's over." "It's too late for that." "It's not too late. We can start over, go to counseling, rebuild our trust." I looked at her tear-stained face and felt something break inside my chest. Not my heart. That had been broken for months. That's something else. The last vestige of the man who'd been willing to blame himself for his wife's betrayal. "You're right," I said. "It's not too late for us to start over, but it's too late to stop what's coming for Carter." "What do you mean?" "I mean your boyfriend picked the wrong man to threaten, and tomorrow night, at your precious gala, everyone in Cleveland's real estate community is going to learn exactly what kind of man Carter Blake really is." Melanie's face went pale. "Dan, please. You have a choice to make, Melanie. You can stand by Carter when his world comes crashing down, or you can stand with your family. But you can't do both." I left her sitting on the bed, probably trying to figure out how to warn Carter without making things worse for herself. It didn't matter. In less than 24 hours, the truth would be public, and all the warnings in the world wouldn't save Carter Blake from the consequences of his actions. The war was almost over, and I intended to win. The Blake & Associates Annual Client Appreciation Gala was Cleveland's premier real estate networking event, held at the Grand Ballroom of the Renaissance Hotel downtown. 500 of the city's wealthiest investors, developers, and property managers gathered each year to celebrate another profitable year in the booming Cleveland market. I arrived early, wearing my best suit and a confident smile that felt foreign after months of uncertainty. Tyler was already in position in the hotel's technical booth, posing as an audio-visual contractor. Eddie had stationed himself at the bar, ready to provide distraction if needed. The ballroom was elegant in an understated way, with crystal chandeliers casting warm light over round tables draped in white linen. A massive screen dominated the front of the room, where Carter would soon be giving his presentation about Blake & Associates' bright future. If everything went according to plan, it would be the last presentation he ever gave. I found my assigned table near the back of the room, strategically positioned to observe the chaos without being too close to the blast zone. Melanie was already seated at the head table with Carter and the other company executives, wearing a stunning black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She caught my eye across the room and gave me a pleading look that I ignored. She'd made her choice when she decided to attend tonight instead of staying home with Riley. "Dan Callahan," a familiar voice said behind me. "I didn't expect to see you here." I turned to find Marcus Webb, the private investigator that Paige Blake had hired. He was a compact man in his 50s with intelligent eyes and the kind of unremarkable appearance that probably served him well in his profession. "Mr. Webb, I could say the same about you." He smiled and took the empty seat beside me. "Mrs. Blake invited me as her guest. She thought I might find tonight's presentation interesting. And will you?" "Oh, I think we all will." So Paige Blake knew what was coming. That was an interesting development, but not necessarily a problem. The more people who wanted to see Carter exposed, the better. The evening began with cocktails and networking, the usual ritual of wealthy people congratulating each other on their continued wealth. I made polite conversation with other guests while keeping one eye on the head table, where Carter was holding court like the king of Cleveland real estate. He looked confident, relaxed, completely unaware that his empire was about to crumble around him. Melanie sat beside him, smiling and laughing at appropriate moments, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept glancing in my direction. At 8 o'clock, the lights dimmed, and Carter took the stage to enthusiastic applause. He looked every inch the successful businessman in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his artificially whitened smile gleaming under the spotlights. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate another record-breaking year for Blake & Associates." More applause. I checked my phone and saw a text from Tyler. "Ready when you are." Carter launched into his presentation, talking about market growth, successful developments, and the bright future of Cleveland real estate. Charts and graphs appeared on the big screen behind him, showing impressive profit margins and expansion plans. "At Blake & Associates, we've built our reputation on 3 core principles," Carter continued: trust, integrity, and results. "These aren't just words to us. They're the foundation of everything we do." I almost choked on my wine. The irony was too perfect. Our clients trust us with their most important investments because they know we'll always act in their best interests. They know our integrity is beyond question, and they know we'll deliver the results they expect. I sent Tyler a single word: now. For a moment, nothing happened. Carter continued his speech, the audience continued their polite attention, and I wondered if something had gone wrong with our plan. Then the screen behind Carter flickered. Instead of his carefully prepared slides, bank records began appearing on the massive display. Account numbers, transaction histories, and transfer records that showed hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing from client escrow accounts into Carter's personal accounts. Carter noticed the change in the audience's attention before he saw the screen himself. Conversations broke out at tables throughout the ballroom, and several people were pointing behind him. He turned around and froze. "What the hell?" he began, then caught himself and tried to maintain composure. "Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be having some technical difficulties." But Tyler was just getting started. The bank records disappeared, replaced by photographs of Carter and Melanie together at his lake house. Intimate photos that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. The audience's murmur became a roar. I saw Paige Blake stand up at her table, her face a mask of fury and vindication. Melanie had gone completely white and was trying to shrink into her chair. Carter frantically gestured to the technical booth, but Tyler had locked him out of the system. More evidence appeared on the screen: records of inflated property appraisals, kickback payments to contractors, and correspondence with city officials that suggested bribery and corruption. "Turn it off!" Carter shouted, abandoning all pretense of control. Turn the damn screen off. But the worst was yet to come. Tyler began playing audio recordings of Carter's conversations, including his threats against me from our meeting earlier in the week. "You're a small-time accountant who couldn't even keep his wife satisfied." Carter's voice boomed through the ballroom's sound system. Melanie came to me because she was tired of being married to a boring, mediocre man who'll never amount to anything. The audience was in chaos now. People were standing, shouting, some heading for the exits, while others pulled out their phones to record the spectacle. I saw several of Carter's business partners pushing through the crowd, probably trying to distance themselves from the scandal as quickly as possible. Carter made a desperate attempt to regain control, grabbing the microphone and shouting over the noise. "This is all fake. Someone is trying to frame me." But Tyler had saved the best for last. The final slide showed wire transfer records to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, along with travel bookings and property purchases that painted a clear picture of Carter's escape plan. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, standing up and projecting my voice across the ballroom, "I present to you the real Carter Blake, thief, adulterer, and coward." All eyes turned to me, and I felt a moment of pure satisfaction. For months, I'd been the victim, the fool who didn't know his wife was cheating. Tonight, I was something else entirely. Carter spotted me in the crowd, and his face contorted with rage. "You son of a bastard! You think you've won?" He jumped down from the stage and started pushing through the crowd toward me, but Marcus Webb stepped into his path. "Carter Blake, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy," Webb announced, producing handcuffs and a badge. "You have the right to remain silent." So Webb wasn't just a private investigator, he was working with law enforcement. That explained how he'd known to be here tonight. Carter struggled briefly, but Webb was clearly experienced in handling resistant suspects. Within moments, Carter was cuffed and being led toward the exit while the crowd watched in stunned silence. As they passed my table, Carter looked directly at me with pure hatred in his eyes. "This isn't over, Dan. You have no idea what you've started." "Yes, I do," I replied calmly. "I've started the end of your career." The ballroom was emptying rapidly now, guests eager to escape the scandal and probably already calling their lawyers to review their own dealings with Blake and Associates. I remained seated, watching the chaos with a sense of deep satisfaction. Melanie appeared beside my table, tears streaming down her face and her elegant composure completely shattered. "Are you happy now?" she demanded. "You've destroyed everything." "I didn't destroy anything, Melanie. I just revealed what was already there." "Carter's right. You have no idea what you've started. There are people involved in this that you don't know about. People who won't appreciate being exposed." "What people?" But she was already walking away, probably heading home to figure out how to salvage her own career from the wreckage of Carter's empire. Tyler appeared at my elbow, grinning with satisfaction. "How do you think that went?" "Better than I hoped." Eddie joined us, carrying 3 beers from the abandoned bar. "To justice served," he said, raising his bottle. We clinked bottles and drank, watching the last of the guests file out of the ballroom. Hotel staff were already beginning to clean up, stacking chairs and collecting abandoned wine glasses. My phone rang. Riley's name appeared on the screen. "Dad, I saw the news. It's all over social media. Did you really just destroy Carter Blake in front of 500 people?" I revealed the truth. Carter destroyed himself. "I'm proud of you, Dad. You stood up for our family. We stood up for our family. This was a team effort." As I hung up, I realized that despite everything we'd been through, despite the pain and betrayal and uncertainty about the future, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Carter Blake was finished. His real estate empire would collapse, his criminal activities would be prosecuted, and his reputation would never recover. More importantly, he'd never again be able to hurt my family or anyone else's. But as Melanie had warned, this might not be the end of the story. Carter had mentioned other people, and his final threat suggested there might be consequences I hadn't anticipated. I looked around the empty ballroom, scene of Carter's spectacular downfall, and smiled. Let them come. I'd learned something important tonight. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, and I wasn't afraid to fight for what mattered to me. Whatever came next, I'd be ready. 3 days after the gala, I woke up to find my front yard occupied by news vans and reporters. The Carter Blake scandal had exploded beyond Cleveland's real estate community, becoming a regional story about corruption, adultery, and spectacular public downfall. I watched through my bedroom window as a perfectly coiffed reporter practiced her stand-up in front of my house. This is the home of Dan Callahan, the mild-mannered accountant who exposed one of Cleveland's biggest real estate frauds in dramatic fashion. Mild-mannered. I suppose that was better than pathetic. My phone had been ringing constantly since the story broke. Interview requests from local news stations, calls from former clients of Blake and Associates wanting to know if their investments were safe, and several very interesting offers from publishers who thought my story might make a good book. But the call I'd been expecting finally came at noon, an unknown number with a Cleveland area code. "Mr. Callahan, my name is Vincent Torino. I think we need to talk." "About what?" "About the mess you've created. Meet me at Lakewood Park in 1 hour. Come alone." I called Tyler immediately. "Ever heard of Vincent Torino?" "Hang on, let me check." I could hear typing in the background. "Oh, this isn't good, Dan. Vincent Torino is connected to some very unpleasant people, money laundering, loan sharking, suspected ties to organized crime. If he wants to meet with you, it's not for a friendly chat." Carter must have been laundering money for them. That would explain the offshore accounts and the panic about exposure. If Torino's people were using Blake and Associates to clean dirty money, your little stunt at the gala just cost them millions. I looked out at the reporters in my yard and made a decision. I'm going to meet with him. That's insane. These aren't people you negotiate with. I'm not going to negotiate. I'm going to end this. Tyler was quiet for a moment. What do you need? Backup, and maybe a way to record the conversation. I'll handle the technical side. For backup, I suggest you bring Eddie and maybe a few of his bar friends, the kind who aren't afraid of trouble. An hour later, I walked through Lakewood Park alone, as instructed. It was a gray October day, with storm clouds gathering over Lake Erie and a cold wind that cut through my jacket. The park was mostly empty except for a few joggers and dog walkers who seemed oblivious to the drama playing out around them. I found Vincent Torino sitting on a bench overlooking the lake. He was a small man in his 60s, impeccably dressed in an expensive suit that probably cost more than my car. He looked like someone's grandfather, if someone's grandfather happened to be a career criminal. "Mr. Callahan, thank you for coming." I sat down beside him, acutely aware of the recording device Tyler had taped to my chest. "What do you want?" "I want to understand why a smart man like you would do something so spectacularly stupid." "I exposed a criminal. That's not stupid." Torino smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Carter Blake was useful to certain business associates of mine. His real estate company provided valuable services that are now no longer available thanks to your public relations stunt. "You mean money laundering." "I mean legitimate business transactions that required discretion that you've now made impossible." A jogger passed by, earbuds in, completely focused on her workout. I envied her ignorance. "Carter made his own choices," I said. "He chose to steal from his clients, cheat on his wife, and betray my family. Whatever consequences he faces are his own fault." "Perhaps. But consequences have a way of spreading to innocent people. Your daughter, for instance. Riley, isn't it? 15 years old, attends Westlake High School, plays soccer for the varsity team." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. I felt my hands clench into fists. "If you touch my daughter—" "I'm not threatening anyone, Mr. Callahan. I'm simply pointing out that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences affect the people we care about most." A black sedan pulled up in the parking lot behind us. 2 large men got out and began walking in our direction, trying to look casual but failing completely. "Here's what's going to happen," Torino continued. "You're going to hold a press conference tomorrow morning. You're going to admit that you fabricated evidence against Carter Blake because you were angry about your marital problems. You're going to apologize publicly and withdraw all complaints and accusations. And if I don't, then your family will discover that Cleveland can be a very dangerous city for people who don't mind their own business." The 2 men had positioned themselves on either side of our bench, close enough to intervene if I tried to run or fight. They were both younger than me, bigger than me, and probably armed, but they hadn't counted on Tyler's technical skills or Eddie's connections. "You know what I think?" I said, standing up slowly. "I think you're scared. Carter's arrest has exposed your money laundering operation, and now you're scrambling to contain the damage. Threatening me won't make the FBI investigation go away." Torino's pleasant facade cracked slightly. "What FBI investigation?" "The one that started when federal agents found evidence of interstate financial crimes in Carter's records. The same records I copied before turning them over to the authorities." This was a bluff, but a calculated one. If Torino's people had been using Blake and Associates for money laundering, federal involvement was inevitable. "You're lying." "Am I? Check the news tomorrow morning. I think you'll find some very interesting developments." One of Torino's men stepped closer, his hand moving toward his jacket. "Boss, maybe we should—" He never finished the sentence. Eddie emerged from behind a nearby tree, moving with surprising speed for a man his size. The thug went down hard, clutching his knee and cursing loudly. The second man spun around, reaching for his weapon, but found himself facing 3 more of Eddie's friends who had materialized from various hiding spots around the park. Torino looked around at the suddenly changed tactical situation and sighed. "This is disappointing, Mr. Callahan. I had hoped we could resolve this matter civilly. We can. You leave my family alone, and I won't release the additional evidence I have about your business operations." "What additional evidence?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of financial records that Tyler had uncovered during his investigation. Records that showed payments from several businesses with known mob connections flowing through Blake & Associates and into offshore accounts. Carter kept very detailed records, including names, dates, and transaction amounts for every dirty dollar that passed through his company. Torino studied the photo, his expression growing darker. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "I know exactly what I'm dealing with. Small-time criminals who hide behind threats because they're too weak to handle their problems directly." The insult hit home. Torino stood up, his composure finally cracking completely. "You think you've won? You think exposing Carter Blake makes you some kind of hero?" "I think it makes me someone who won't be pushed around by thugs and cowards." Eddie appeared beside me, slightly out of breath but grinning. "Everything okay here, Dan?" "Just finishing up a business discussion." Torino looked around at Eddie's friends, who were helping his injured associate to his feet. The tactical situation had shifted completely in our favor, and he knew it. "This isn't over," he said finally. "Yes, it is. Carter Blake is finished, your money laundering operation is exposed, and federal investigators are already following the paper trail. Your best bet is to disappear quietly before they trace everything back to you." Torino walked toward his sedan without another word, his remaining associate limping along behind him. They drove away without looking back, leaving me alone in the park with Eddie and his friends. "Think that's the end of it?" Eddie asked. "Probably. Men like Torino are bullies. They fold when someone stands up to them." But as we walked back to our cars, I couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation was just the beginning of something larger. Carter Blake had been connected to people and organizations I was only beginning to understand, and exposing him might have consequences I couldn't anticipate. My phone buzzed with a text from Riley. "Dad, there are more reporters at the house, and Mom's packing suitcases." So Melanie was finally making her choice. Part of me felt relieved that the uncertainty was ending, but another part mourned the final collapse of our 20-year marriage. I drove home through the gray Cleveland afternoon, past the reporters still camped in my yard, and found Riley waiting for me in the kitchen. She looked older than her 15 years, worn down by the stress of the past week. "Mom's upstairs," she said. "She's been crying and packing all afternoon." "What did you tell the reporters?" "That my dad's a hero who stood up to criminals and corrupt businessmen. They seem to like that angle." I hugged her tight, grateful once again for her strength and loyalty. "What do you want to happen next, kiddo?" "I want us to be okay, just you and me, if that's how it has to be." "That's how it's going to be." Melanie appeared in the doorway, carrying 2 suitcases and looking like she'd aged a decade in the past week. Her perfect makeup was smeared, her expensive clothes wrinkled, and her usually immaculate hair hung limp around her shoulders. "I'm leaving," she announced unnecessarily. "Where will you go?" "My sister's house in Columbus, until I figure out what to do next." She looked at Riley with desperate eyes. "You could come with me, start fresh somewhere new?" Riley shook her head. "I'm staying with Dad." The rejection hit Melanie like a physical blow. She sagged against the doorframe, all her remaining composure crumbling. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she whispered. "I just wanted to feel important, desired. Carter made me feel like I mattered." "You did matter," I said quietly. "You mattered to us. But that wasn't enough for you." She nodded, accepting the truth of it. "I'm sorry, Dan. I'm sorry I destroyed our family." "You didn't destroy our family. You changed it. Riley and I will be fine." Melanie kissed Riley goodbye, a long embrace that spoke of years of separation to come. Then she looked at me one last time. "Will you ever forgive me?" "I don't know, but I hope someday you'll forgive yourself." She left without another word, driving away from the house we'd shared for 15 years and the family she'd chosen to betray. Riley and I stood in the kitchen, listening to the reporters shouting questions as Melanie's car pulled out of the driveway. Then we heard them refocusing their attention on our front door, probably hoping for a statement about the dramatic departure. "What now?" Riley asked. I looked around our kitchen, with its family photos and Riley's artwork still hanging on the refrigerator, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. "Now we move forward. together. Outside, the reporters continued their vigil, waiting for the next chapter of a story that had captivated Cleveland's attention. But inside our house, the real story was just beginning. The story of a father and daughter who'd survived betrayal, stood up to criminals, and discovered that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be destroyed by other people's choices. Carter Blake was in jail, Vincent Torino was probably fleeing the country, and Melanie was gone. The war was over, and we had won. Not because we'd destroyed our enemies, but because we'd refused to let our enemies destroy us. And that, I realized, was the most important victory of all.